I want to take a few minutes to introduce our guest speakers today on the substantive topics of anti-human trafficking or human trafficking and the revenge porn. The first guest I'd like to introduce is Lorena Volrath Bueno. Lorena and I went to law school at Florida State. She is a prosecutor and has been a prosecutor since 2003, and she's currently chief of the Felony Division B, Chief of Felony Division B in Leon County State Attorney's Office, which this is the 2nd Judicial Circuit. She also worked in the Orlando State Attorney's Office in the 9th Judicial Circuit from 2005 to 2007. During her time down in Orlando, she was a member of the Sex Crimes and Child Abuse Unit of the State Attorney's Office. When she was in that position, she prosecuted child abuse, including those resulting in death, and all sex offenses, including children and adults. In February of 2010, she left the State Attorney's Office when she was offered a position at the U.S. Attorney's Office over in Pensacola in a grant-funded position under Project Safe Childhood. That project is a nationwide initiative launched by the Department of Justice in May 2006 to combat growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse. Since then, Lorena has come back to Tallahassee and returned to the State Attorney's Office in order to continue pursuing justice for victims of sexual offenses at a state level. Now with Lorena is Sergeant Sonia Bush of the Tallahassee Police Department, and I will let Lorena introduce Sergeant Bush in just a few minutes because both Lorena and Bibb know Sergeant Bush very well. But I will tell you she just became a sergeant recently. Before that she was with the Special Victims Unit, and so instead of bumbling through her biography, I think Lorena would be more than happy to talk about her. But before we do that, I just want to also recognize Lori Finley. She is a high school student at Childs High School. She's in the very back row in blue. We're going to talk with Lori at the end of the program a little bit. I told you yesterday, Lori received a grant from an organization called And Power Vital Voices. It is a partnership between the parent company of And Inc., which is the parent company of Ann Taylor and Loft. And they've partnered with Vital Voices, which provides 50 grants a year to students, or grants to 50 students, to employ these young women across the United States to affect global progress, to invest in their communities, and begin their journey as the next generation of leaders. So I've asked Lori, who received a grant, to support legislation against human trafficking. And I've asked her to join us this morning. She will join us at the end of the program to tell us a little bit about what she's doing with her grant, what she has done. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lorena.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Like she said, my name is Lorena Volrath Bueno, and I am an assistant state attorney and have been my entire career. I primarily focus in the area of domestic violence, sexual violence, and now as a chief, I do all the homicides in my division, so it's a nice mix. As having done this, I will tell you, doing a homicide is a nice break every once in a while. Because of my specialization in sex crimes, I am an on-call prosecutor, which means 24 hours a day I get phone calls, and most of them are from Sonia. That's how we became friends. She has worked in sex crimes for 7 years. She has started and run what's known as the HRV program, the High Risk Victim Program. She also has more responsibilities than any person I know, and personally we have worked together on too many cases to count. I've had too many victims that we have really cared about, and she is going to talk to you a little bit about some of her personal experiences with human trafficking. We do have a couple cases in Tallahassee right now. I think she has 5 that we'll talk about, and those criminal proceedings are going on right now in the state system. So I'm going to start now talking a little bit about revenge porn, and then we're going to move into the human trafficking area. I'm sure you may have heard the term revenge porn before, but it's something that at this point basically stems from either someone being involved in a relationship and having consensual photos taken of them. And what's happening is we're seeing an influx of people, and mostly in domestic or dating partnerships, that are then turning around and using those photographs against the person, either publishing them in social media sites or sending them to friends, family members, or coworkers. I don't know if you guys are aware, but there are currently over 1,000 different social media sites, which I probably only know about 4 or 5. Kids know all the 1,000 of them. There's things like Snapchat, there's your Facebook, there's your Instagram, there's your Kik. There's a lot of different programs which say that they are untraceable and that they don't permanently keep the photos, but we all know all you have to do is take a screenshot and then it lasts forever. So one real case that we've had in my office is the state of Florida versus Mario Craps. This charge, the defendant, we actually charged him with aggravated stalking, and the enhancement to go from regular misdemeanor stalking to felony stalking is that someone has continued the stalking after a court order. In this case, the defendant actually had an injunction against him from the victim. We also charged him with what's known as unauthorized computer use, pursuant to statute 815.06 sub 1 sub A. And what happened was they had actually dated the victim and the defendant for approximately 10 months. And according to what she had told law enforcement, it wasn't a bad breakup. There wasn't really any ill will, as far as she could tell, until after the breakup he started stalking her. She had allowed him to take consensual photos of her while they were in the relationship together, of her nude and in sexually explicit poses. What happened was she started having the tires in her car slashed over and over. She managed to get a temporary injunction, which was surprising considering we were never able to charge him substantively for the tire slashing. It's very hard to prove who slashed her tires when there's no witnesses, no other evidence. After the defendant was served with a temporary injunction, which requires, law enforcement shows up at your house and says, hey, you've been served, stay away from this person, here's their name and all the places they go to that you can no longer go to. Someone hacked her Instagram account. She believes that he knew enough about her personal information to kind of figure out her password, because 90% of us have the same password on everything and have it written down somewhere. Right. So he hacked her account and started putting naked photos of her on her Instagram account along with sexually explicit comments on it. She gets an influx of friends and family members who contact her and say, oh my goodness, BT Dubs, you have a bunch of naked photos of you on your Instagram. What's happening? So thankfully he didn't change her password and she was able to go in, delete the photos, and then again change her password. So what we did is, because we did not have a specific statute that encompasses revenge porn, we charged him under unauthorized computer use, which specifically says that if someone were to access a computer program or some type of specifically computer networks, electronic device, computer system, access it without authorization, then we have the ability to charge them under this. What I will tell you is that unfortunately the legislature is not keeping up with how fast technology is changing. I prosecuted someone with unauthorized computer use a couple years ago for going in. They worked in a civil law firm, and when they were fired, they had gone in and deleted all of the files. Yes, and it was hundreds of thousands of people, because these were all large cases involving many large class action suits, and all of it was equal protection stuff. And when we recovered everything, we weren't able to say dispositively what, if anything, disappeared. You can't prove a negative. As such, convict this person at trial gets overturned on appeal because they said basically the legislature got it wrong when they went ahead and made this law, because they didn't account for the fact that we might not be able to prove that something had been destroyed. So, and it includes accesses or causes to be accessed any computer system, computer network, or electronic device with knowledge of such access is unauthorized. So it's also gone ahead and given us the ability to, if we can at least show that they accessed it without damaging, without changing it, we can still prosecute them. And of course, it also engages in audio-video surveillance. We do have cases in which people remotely access computers. How many of you guys have a camera on your computer? One of those built-ins? Right. You can remotely access someone's computer and get their camera to start recording them without them necessarily knowing it. And we've had cases where that's happened, that the only way the victim knew that that was happening was because if they were lucky enough to have some type of light that comes on the camera. Now, if it was me and I was a smart defendant, I would probably take a little piece of black tape over that light, and then you would never know that that camera was being accessed while you were in the privacy and the comfort of your own home. Anyone who violates subsection 2 commits a felony of the 3rd degree, and that's what Mr. Craps was actually prosecuted for, which was a 3rd degree felony. One of the attorneys in my division went to trial on it, got a misdemeanor stalking, but got him convicted of the F3. Now, unfortunately, with it does not come any type of registration or any other sanction that arguably some people have talked about as being important when it comes to things like revenge porn, but of course now he is a convicted felon. So what is the harm? Once an image has been uploaded onto the internet, it is there forever. Forever. There is no deleting, there is no taking down, there is no removing. All it takes is one person copying that image and then sharing it. We currently have dozens of sites, which are basically file sharing sites. You guys remember when Napster was going on? You could go on and you could share your files. Well, now they have it for images and videos. And 99% of the time, that's where we get most of our child porn cases. It's because you can anonymously either go ahead and go server to server and say, hey, you have a picture that I want of Michael Jordan playing basketball. I can pull that file from you in our file sharing program. Or I can do something better, because unfortunately people have gotten smarter. I can get in a file sharing program that basically takes bits and pieces of images from so many different sources, it's untraceable. And that's what we're dealing with now. So it is impossible to remove something from the internet when it has been uploaded. Now here's the question. There's obviously the harm that comes to an adult person, whether it be what happens with your job, your family, the ramifications in your profession, because can you imagine someone Googles you? I mean, have you ever Googled yourself and seen how much information there is about you on the internet? I would recommend that if you haven't done so, you do so now. Imagine if someone Googles you and a naked photo of you is what comes up. Employers, family members, people at the PTA, you know, members of your church, or people who are just curious. Now imagine if instead of being an adult whose photo has been posted, you are a minor. And I will tell you right now, my experience has been that minors who have access to smartphones are sending sexually explicit photos like other people send emails. I mean, basically that's what we're dealing with. And once that's on the internet, that is for forever. So let's say if my victim is under the age of 18 and is engaged in what's known as sexual conduct. Ooh, what happened? So, the definition of child pornography is any image depicting a minor engaged in sexual conduct. Sexual conduct will include actual or simulated sexual intercourse, deviant sexual intercourse, sexual bestiality, masturbation, sadomasochistic abuse, actual lewd exhibition of the genitals, actual physical contact with a person's clothed or unclothed genitals, pubic area, buttocks, if such a person is female, breast with the intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of either party, or any act or conduct which constitutes sexual battery or simulates that sexual battery or will be committed. So the photographs that I see as part of my job when we take someone's cell phone and do what's known as a cell write, which basically, and by the way, everything you do on your cell phone stays. So in case you were wondering. When we dump their cell phones and we get all of the information off of it, including emails, text messages, and photographs, young people are taking photographs of themselves in sexually explicit ways and sending it to other young people. They're transmitting it via, you know, Snapchat, thinking that it's not going to be permanent, and all you need to do is take a snapshot photo of it, and they are creating their own child pornography. The issue with live victims has become so prevalent of the creation of child pornography that they've actually amended the legislation to include basically civil liability that we can do as part of our criminal case to encompass the fact that once you've been a victim of child pornography and that is out there, you are going to continue to need services probably for the rest of your life. So what is already illegal in the state of Florida? Well, we've already talked about the unauthorized computer use. We also have what's known as sexting. We've all heard the term sexting, right? Well, the sexting statute really kind of was created for the purposes of dealing with the fact that we have so many minors who are sending sexually explicit photos and videos to each other. And this includes young people who are having consensual sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and then they break up, and those videos are being passed around like wildfire in the school. And so what they've done is, instead of creating as many, I guess, as many harsh penalties as one would have for an adult, we have created a statute which will say, you know, if this is a minor who has done this, what we're going to do is we're going to, first time it happens, is it's going to be basically a civil citation that has been created, so that they have to do community service hours, they get a good talking to. I like to call it the you get scared by the police when they show up at your school kind of thing. And it gives them an opportunity to learn from the mistake but not be penalized to the point where it's going to destroy their life. Once they do it again, then we have different issues. And so what it says is any minor who uses a computer or any other device capable of electronic data transmission or distribution to transmit or distribute to another minor any photograph or video of any person which its nudity is harmful to minors, and those are the definitions. And say, right, the minor does not violate this paragraph if all of the following apply. The minor did not solicit the photograph or video. People send out mass texts and mass emails to other people in the school sometimes, so if you did not ask for the photo to be sent to you, you can't be violating the statute. The minor took reasonable steps to report the photograph or video to the minor's legal guardian or to a school or law enforcement official. And the minor did not transmit or distribute the photograph or video to a third party. So you didn't ask for it, you reported it right away, and you didn't share it, then you're going to be exempt from this statute. You're not going to be penalized. And they said that the transmission or distribution of multiple photographs or videos prohibited by paragraph 1A is a single offense if the photographs or videos are transmitted or distributed within the same 24-hour period. And that is, when they send out a mass text or a mass email, they're only going to get one charge as opposed to 57 charges or whatever, to how many, whatever their friends list was that they sent it out to. And then the possession of multiple photographs or videos that were transmitted or distributed by a minor is a single offense if they were transmitted or distributed within the same 24-hour period. Yes, ma'am.
So is this possession or distribution by minors of minors?
Generally, yes, it'll be transmission of minors by minors. We have had minors who will send sexually explicit videos of adults, like regular porn, and that'll be covered too, because it's just any sexually explicit.
So this isn't like a 15-year-old kid at home watching porn on his computer?
No,
Okay.
no, that's not against the law. It's frowned upon, but if an adult is showing pornography, adult pornography to a minor, that is against the law. So yes, unfortunately, the reality is that young people in high school are engaging in sexual intercourse. They are engaging in sexual behavior. They are, if you have a cell phone, you can look at all kinds of porn. You know, that is happening. What we are trying to do is we're trying to deal with some of the problems, the ramifications, and those things that are having long-term effects. Because young people don't realize that their life is going to continue past high school and that there are going to be long-term ramifications. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of that, not realizing it, I happen to have adopted 2 teenage girls out of DCF care, who I was a guardian ad litem for, and have been a guardian ad litem for a long time. And as I'm sure you know, kids in foster care, especially those who've been sexually abused, are highly sexualized.
Yes.
So what is the state going to do to educate these kids instead of just criminally punish them, to help them understand having self-esteem about their bodies and why this is not right when they've had an adult raping them since they were 4 years old?
Right. The criminal justice system is not set up for all of the services necessary. Unfortunately, my primary area is punishment. It's punishment and it's protection of the community. However, we do have agencies that we work with. Most of the time, I cannot start submitting services to someone unless there is a criminal case that is pending. We do have agencies, and Sonia can talk about some of that stuff, who do give us services parallel to. I myself am involved in non-government organizations that do provide services. One, the responsibility is on the people who have the children. If the children are in your care, custody, and control, there are options available to you. There are programs through FDLE, through the Tallahassee Police Department, educating you on how to be smart about what you do with the internet and smartphones. There has to be supervision by the parents. There has to be frank discussions. We go out to the schools, we deal with the GALs, we do everything that we can. Most of the time, the best services they're going to get is going to be when they're in juvenile court, if it's part of the criminal justice system. Once they age out and they come to adult court, there really isn't very much that we can do. I have a lot of one-on-one talks. Sonia's had a lot of one-on-one talks. I am lucky in that my boss allows me a lot of leeway in how I deal with cases. And there are cases, where I say, sit them down, talk to them, explain to them what happened, give them a warning and let them know this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to resolve it this way as best as we can, and then provide services to them.
This is my ignorance about statute writing. I didn't want to do this earlier, but can you not include in the statute that a first offender is required to, I assume you can, attend counseling on issues?
Sure, and they've already set up this civil citation program. The problem is that most of the time when laws are written, they are written without financing for it without provisions. Most of us aren't even sure where the civil citation is supposed to come from. I'm getting calls from law enforcement saying, well, we don't have a civil citation program for these kids. What do we do? I don't know. Do we have an adult civil citation program? Yeah, well, use that. Well, we don't have money. We don't have resources. They've gone ahead and written a law, but they haven't given me the resources necessary in order to affect it.
So just so I know, because I'm meeting with a bunch of legislators today, this bill doesn't require counseling for.
No, it requires community service. Yes, ma'am.
Without regressing back into what Viv and Wendy were talking about, I'm just really curious about why under 2A, it's a single offense. I feel like if you've got a teenager who knows that they're sending a photo out to their entire contact list of 500 people,
Right.
why they're only going to get dinged once when they know, and I mean, I feel like if you're going to send it to 500 people, it's malicious and you know.
Absolutely. What they're saying is, they're just saying that instead of them having 500 accounts, if it was a mass email, they're going to use it as one offense. Because generally, I can charge every time, every person you do it to, I can charge it. They've done it this way to say, well, this will be all encompassing that first offense. If they do it again, then there are going to be harsher penalties. But they decided that that's how they wanted to do. We don't have input in what happens. We just deal with it when it's been enacted and then comes and I have to enforce it, so. Yes, ma'am.
Just kind of an evidentiary question. I mean, in the Crafts case, wouldn't his defense have been, well, I didn't do it? How are you proving who's sending?
We're wily. I was never a computer person. I do so many child pornography cases now. I know more about computers than anybody else in my office. The fact of the matter is that every time you do something, there's a trail. We can find it. I can figure out where you access it. I can find out what your IP address is. You think you're going to spoof it? I can track you back. I can make sure that I've gone ahead and pulled your cell phone. I can pull your cell phone records. I can pull your Wi-Fi records. I can find out where you were, what you were doing, who you were texting. I can find out what phone calls you made. I can do all of that based just on an electronic trail. And so we were able to determine that he had accessed, and based on the contacts and his accessibility, that he was involved. Which, let me tell you, makes for a sexy case when we're talking about, the 5 hours that I have to go through the technology portion of it. But we do have the ability. We have a lot of resources. The other problem is that having prosecutors and having law enforcement who are trained and aware and know how to use those resources is something that is also very important. Thank God I'm a lifetime prosecutor. I will be here until I croak in my chair. But there's young people who are coming in who we're trying to educate about that. So, but we don't try to tell all our secrets. So, but yeah, we can usually track it. So we do have an electronic trail that we follow. So for our first time sexting on a minor commits a non-criminal violation, 8 hours of community service, or the court can, in lieu of community service, order a $60 fine. And then they can say the court may order the minor to participate in suitable training or instructions. Okay, I don't even know what that means. And again, we don't really have anything set up. Commits a misdemeanor of the first degree for a violation that occurs after being found to have committed a non-criminal violation for sexting. So if it happens again, misdemeanor of the first degree. Commits a felony of the third degree for a violation that occurs after first having been found to have committed a misdemeanor of the first degree. So each time it becomes more and more punitive. And then it says, this section does not prohibit the prosecution of a minor for a violation of any law of this state if the photograph or video that depicts nudity also includes the depiction of sexual conduct or sexual excitement, and does not prohibit the prosecution of a minor of stalking. So we do have the ability to prosecute them under other statutes. We're not required to only use sexting if it is something more egregious. And depending on the case-by-case basis, we have to figure out. And a lot of that comes down to us as prosecutors and law enforcement trying to decide what the best resolution is for this specific situation. So right now, other states have started passing laws that have criminalized revenge porn. We have 16 states right now: Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Delaware, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Maryland, New Jersey, Idaho, Pennsylvania, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. California's had the most, newsworthy prosecutions that have happened right now, and actually had the first prosecution under their specific revenge porn statute. We'll talk about that in a second. New Jersey's law prohibits the distribution of sexually explicit photographs and films by any person knowing that he is not licensed or privileged to do so, and without the subject's consent. This was the law that was used to prosecute Darren Ravi, which was the Rutgers student who distributed the webcam footage of his roommate Tyler Clementi engaging in sexual activity, after which Mr. Clementi committed suicide. I'm sure everyone saw that. It was all over the news. This law has also been used to prosecute several men who allegedly distributed revenge porn of their ex-girlfriends. So there are some civil remedies also, and again, I'm sorry, it's so small. Recent lawsuits over revenge porn have alleged the invasion of privacy, public disclosure of private fact, and intentional infliction of emotional distress against the individual who uploaded the images. 40 states, including California and New York, have anti-cyber harassment laws that may be applicable to cases of revenge porn. We do have a cyber stalking law on the books here in Florida, and that is another option that you have, however, it is only a misdemeanor. In February 2014, a $500,000 settlement was awarded to a Texas woman who brought a suit against her ex-boyfriend for posting video and photos of her on the internet. The state did not have a specific revenge porn law at the time of the lawsuit. There is a Communications Decency Act. Recent revenge porn lawsuits name service providers and websites as defendants alongside individuals. And by the way, most of your social media sites have very intelligently gone ahead and put their servers in foreign countries that do not have to respond to the applicable laws in the United States. In fact, I think it's, is it Roulette? What's the Roulette one that we have? There's a website that you can go on, and as you go through, it's got a roulette system, and you never know what's going to be on the other side, whether it be adult, child, bestiality, whatever. There's something coming up. It immediately pops on you, makes a connection, you have 15 seconds, and then it goes. The thing is the servers are located in a country that does not respond to our subpoenas or our laws and is not regulated by the U.S. And previously, the language on the website indicated this website specifically does not adhere to U.S. law, so it's safe for you to do whatever you want on it. And that's using, paraphrasing. Well, the Communication Decency Act shields website and service providers from liability for content posted by users. If user-generated content posted to a website does not violate copyright or criminal laws, the sites have no obligations to remove the content. I will tell you, Facebook, very good about taking things down right away. Instagram as well, if you alert them. There are some websites that give us some more trouble, who say, this is user content, they can post whatever they want on here, First Amendment protections, blah, blah, blah. So that is one of the burdens that it is doing our job, is trying to get these different media sites to respond. And 80% of revenge porn pictures and videos are taken by the subjects themselves. Those individuals can bring actions for copyright infringement against the person who uploaded their nude or semi-nude selfies. Again, do not take naked photos of yourself. Polaroids and a lighter. That's the only way. I'm just saying, let's be old school people. American victims may file Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown notices with service providers, and revenge porn site MyX.com has been a defendant in copyright infringement cases. So this is the thing. There has started a business of websites that are making money off of revenge porn. Because we are nothing if not entrepreneurial here. So some people have raised the issue, well, what about First Amendment and some of the anti-SLAPP laws? This is the thing. We have found a compelling interest to protect certain types of harm. We do that with child pornography. We do that with different areas. I know that the courts are hesitant to deal with issues, especially when they're going to say it's going to infringe on the First Amendment. However, we'll talk a little bit about some of the ramifications and what people have been experiencing. And I do believe that this is a danger that should be criminalized and should be prosecuted. A lot of revenge porn uploaders and websites may also challenge the lawsuits using state protections against strategic lawsuit against public participation anti-SLAPP laws, which allow defendants to counter lawsuits aimed at stifling free speech. But that's for someone who makes more money than me. So the Federal Trade Commission has actually popped in, which I was very proud of them. In January of 2015, they issued a press release regarding a website operator who was banned from the revenge porn business after the FTC charged he unfairly posted nude photos. So what he did is he basically had two businesses going. One where people could post pictures on his site, which was a revenge porn site. He also was actively going out and tricking women into sending him nude photos. He was like fake posting on Craigslist, saying, send me a naked photo of you, I'll send a naked photo of me. Again, I don't know why anybody does that. When he amassed all of this personal information and put these up, he then had another website that said, if you pay me $200 to $500, I will have those photos taken down from the Revenge Porn website. And he owned both businesses. Yeah. Why criminalize such conduct? We just finished having in San Diego, California, a gentleman by the name of Kevin Ballart. He was running a revenge porn website where people were posting nude pictures of their ex-lovers who then had to pay the man to take down the images. And so he was doing the same kind of scam where he had like the two businesses going, I'm gonna post the pictures, pay me money, how to take it down. He was found guilty of 27 counts, including identity theft and extortion, and faces up to 20 years in prison. The San Diego County Superior Court jury was able to reach a verdict on 2 charges that they had, and so he had a mistrial on that. And I like whoever this prosecutor is, because, yeah. What she said was, the jury sent a message that criminals attempting to exploit victims from behind the computer screen will not be shielded from the law or from jail. So these people who were victimized by this man included teachers, wives, professionals. Once these photographs started being discovered, they lost jobs, they lost relationships, ruined their personal, their professional relationships. One of the victims had attempted suicide. They said that the defendant subjected his victims to shame and embarrassment in the context of their family, their community, and their workplace, said the Attorney General. Now, at the time that they had this prosecution, after he had been arrested, is when California came out with their specific revenge porn statute, which only makes it a misdemeanor in California. And so what she discussed, and I agree with, is that legislation really needs to keep up with how fast technology is changing and how fast the world is changing. Technology and the people who are enforcing the laws need to keep up with it as well. She said, the problem is that it didn't seem right for us to prosecute him under the misdemeanor statute, especially when what he was doing was extorting money out of these victims. She said, and the way it works for us is we're limited in what we can do, search warrant wise, and in some areas when it's only dealing with a misdemeanor. In order to prosecute these cases, you need to freeze accounts, preserve information. You have to get subpoenas and sometimes follow a trail that'll take you down 12 different rabbit holes in order to get to the point that you want to go. And there's a lot of work, a lot of expense, and a lot of time. So these crimes need to be felonies, in my opinion. It's believed to be the first conviction of an operator of a revenge porn website, although 2 months ago, a Los Angeles man who posted a topless photo of his ex-girlfriend on Facebook was sentenced to a year in jail for violating California's new revenge porn law. And that, again, is because the new law is only a misdemeanor. The law enacted in October of 2013, after this incident that led to the prosecution of Ballard, it makes a misdemeanor to post identifiable nude pictures of someone else online without their permission and with the intent of causing serious emotional distress or humiliation. So I guess if you cover their face, then it's fine. Probably still not. How many people think that you might be recognized even if your face was covered up? Yeah. So the Attorney General's office said, I specifically did the prosecution this way because I didn't feel that what we had available to us was keeping up with the severity of what was happening to those victims. And of course, we know the term revenge porn is used because most of the explicit images have been posted online by former lovers. And it says, between December 2nd, 2012 and September 17th of 2013, Bollert allowed people to anonymously post more than 10,000 images, mostly of women, on his now defunct YouGotPosted.com website without the knowledge of those in the picture, as prosecutor says. And that is the thing. It is not only just what the harm they do to you, but also the financial ramifications. And if somebody is profiting from that, to be able to seize those assets, because we do have a lot of forfeiture statutes that run parallel to our criminal statutes, that also has to be thought of when we're talking about legislation. Okay, so new in 2015. This is House Bill 151, which is the bill that we've been talking about, which is a criminalization of revenge porn here in the state of Florida. And basically what they're hoping to do is go ahead and say, prohibit individuals from electronically disclosing sexually explicit images of identifiable persons with the intent to harass such person if the individual knows or should have known that the person did not consent to such disclosure. And it provides enhanced penalties for violations by persons 18 years or older involving victims younger than 16. So So it's kind of tracking the video voyeurism statute that we already have, because we do have a lot of prosecutions of people who are surreptitiously recording people in moments when they believe to be private. It is an enhancement from an F3 to an F2 if the person who is being videotaped is under the age of 16. The effective date would be October 1st of 2015. Right, so except when the victim is under the age of 16, it would be a third-degree felony, at which point it would be a second-degree felony if you're an adult who is then posting pictures of someone under the age of 16 years old. Okay. So that is the end of the revenge porn section. Sonia and I are going to talk to you a little bit about human trafficking as well.
Wait, before we move on.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just, hold on, I'm obviously as a mother of kids, foster care, I'm really concerned about the part of it that applies to minors. When this was presented to us this fall, no one ever said it would apply to minors, that it was gonna be because men who put their girlfriend's pictures on afterwards. So I'm trying to figure out how I, as a guardian ad litem and a mother of kids out of foster care, can go to my legislators today and be supportive of this. You know, there are, as you know, approximately 8,000 kids on any given day in foster care in Florida, and their parents have, a judge has determined they can't or won't parent them properly.
Right.
So, and lots of these kids are highly sexualized. I know from personal experience, Caitlin Mudge up there, who's the adoptive aunt for my kids, knows from personal experience, these kids don't understand. They're already, you know, one back because they're teenagers and they just make dumb decisions.
Right.
But they're kids who have been sexually abused and had people mistreat them sexually all their lives that they can remember. So I'm concerned that we're going to have, and the statistics are already against foster kids. You know it.
Right.
The statistics of how many of them end up in prison already are outrageous. So I'm concerned now that you're going to have girls and boys, because they're equally engaged in it, being put in jail because the 8,000 kids, and I can tell you right now, I had that conversation with my girls about that it was child porn and they had never heard that before and didn't believe me when I first told them that. So what my question is can't you as a prosecutor, without the part of this bill saying that it applies to minors, if you take just that part out, don't you have the discretion to try a child as an adult and apply this bill if you took out the part that's minors from that?
Well, we do have the ability to try minors as adults in certain situations, and there is a list of those cases that can be, and depending on age and circumstances. But I can tell you that the sexting bill legislation already exists. So if a minor is sending photographs that are sexually explicit to another minor, that law already exists.
That doesn't mean it's a good one. It doesn't mean that they're not failing foster kids.
Right, no.
Everybody's failing foster kids. So if, you know, that's my job, is to speak on behalf of them.
Right, of course. But what I can tell you is that it does provide to give us the leeway to do things that we need to do to deal with it, so that the first time they get in trouble, it is not criminal. And we have the
But
choice.
there's no counseling in it.
Right.
So they're punished immediately, but not ever educated about it, and they're going back to a group home where my girls came from.
Well, what they're
where no one's
doing is they're
gonna
not
teach
being punished in a traditional way. What their understanding is there are ramifications, you know, to what they are doing. And if there is counseling available, then it'll have to be not through the criminal justice system. It'll have to be services that are available in the community. Because unfortunately, I barely have enough money to pay for the medical bills of a victim. I have a 3-year-old who has gonorrhea from a sexual assault case, and I have to find money for that. You know, people used to have to pay for their sexual assault kits. You know, we are limited by the finances that people find are appropriate. You know, defendants don't pay court costs, and all of the money that goes to fund my programs comes from court costs. So I would love to be able to do that, but I don't have that ability.
You're not concerned that this will have the majority, the more lower income children and children in foster care will end up in?
No. I think it's going to be all the well-to-do kids who are sexting each other, because that's what I'm seeing now. I'm not seeing the kids who, when they come to my office, and this is a foster kid who's been sexually abused and has been a victim 5 times, I'm not charging that person. I'm not making that decision. I have the ability, and I do have the leeway in my office to say, this kid is a victim, there are these circumstances, and we're going to talk about this too. You know, we have a lot of our kids who come in who are in our HRV programs who are at high risk for human trafficking or are prostituting themselves as minors. You know what? We're not arresting them other than we need to get them away from the pimp for 2 nights and then we're gonna go ahead and, get rid of those charges, but we need to be able to get them out of that situation. So there are people like Sonia and I in every office in the state doing what we can with the limited resources that we have. However, taking away my ability to get a handle on these kids in the criminal justice system and while they're juveniles, because if they do get charged as a juvenile, I can make them go to a program. I can make them get services. I can make them do a litany of things that I cannot do to a non-criminally prosecuted person. And as a juvenile, they have the option to get those services through the juvenile system and not be classified as adult, because I'll tell you what will happen is so many of my kids, my girls and my boys, juvenile, 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 juvenile. They were a victim of a sex offense. Every time I see them, I say, you're going to be 18, you're going to be 18. I'm not going to be able to do anything for you when you start getting adult charges. And I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it where they've come out the other end, and God bless, I'm going to a graduation. And then I've seen it where they're going to prison. And the fact of the matter is, it is the reality in that we are completely hampered because nobody is giving us money. We have no money. Most of the attorneys who work for me make less than most people's secretaries.
A child who runs away 4 times in a 12-month period has an 80% chance that they are either being sexually exploited or will be sexually exploited. And the first time we heard this statistic, we were like, there's no way. I've been in law enforcement for 24 years, and juvenile runaways are, excuse my language, the biggest pain in the ass you got. Okay? They are a living, breathing nightmare. And nobody wants to deal with them. So we had to start looking at, could this be true? Could this be happening here in Tallahassee? So Laura and I came back and we started going through and flagging all of our chronic runaways. And what we started doing was not only looking at how many times they run, but we started contacting DCF and how many times had those same kids had contact with DCF, how many times had those kids had contact with the criminal justice system. And we were seeing that all these agencies were touching these kids and they were throwing and slapping a Band-Aid on them and sending them on their way. And these kids were just progressively spiraling in that funnel downward, and they were sexually exploited. Either in their home or once they were on the run, they were contacted by a pimp. It's amazing how quickly these children within 24 hours are hooked up with somebody who will sexually exploit them through human trafficking. So it took us about 2 years to convince our agency to allow us to try to do something about this. And what we did is we went out to DCF, to GAL, to the state attorney's office, to the public defender's office, and through the public defender's office, we reached out to the Big Ben something social worker at the public defender's office. Viv, you probably know what Etienne is. What agency is he with?
I don't know, we just letters to me.
Oh, okay. So anyway, that's true, long ones. So anyway, we got this group together and we decided that we're going to start tracking these kids. And we had to really, it was overwhelming how difficult it is to protect a child in the state of Florida. It's ridiculous how difficult it is to protect a child. So we had to really start thinking outside the box with these kids. So we developed the program, the High Risk Victim Program, and once a month we meet and we staff all of these kids. And I would say 85 to 90% of our kids are currently in foster care. A few of them we've actually, well, I won't even go there. Most of them are in foster care. Sometimes it's a little easier for us when they're in foster care because DCF and foster care will cooperate with us in trying to get them into the services that we think they need. We have gone and tried to think outside the box in terms of going before the judges. It's kind of took a while for them to listen to us and say, hey, this is a kid that we believe is being human trafficked, okay? Because that's what it segues into, human trafficking. Has anybody in here worked with human trafficking victims at all? Okay, you have? Okay. They're very difficult because they don't identify as victims. And, you know, it's kind of like butting your head up against the wall. But we try to provide services for them, and here's the problem, and this is what Lorena was talking about, and this is what you're talking about. The services aren't there. We make these pretty laws, and then we don't fund them. Right now, we have one place in Tampa that we can send our kids to that are human trafficked. one place. And what the problem is if there's a bed available, is keeping this kid in place until that bed's available that we can get them there. Because we know the pimp or the trafficker is gonna get back on, back their hands back on them. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this real quick and for time. So that's our program with high-risk victims. When we started working that, we identified about 23 kids in Leon County that we watched and realized that they were being trafficked. Next thing we did is we went through our Internet Crimes Against Children program, which is attached to the Special Victims Unit. And they get tips through the National Center for Exploited and Missing Children. And these tips can be in the form of cyber tips that there's advertisements on like Backpage or Craigslist or some type of social site where they're advertising for sex, prostitution, and we would follow up on those tips. January a year ago, I had started going through the human trafficking training and realizing that, human trafficking is something that we tend to think about happens overseas. Somebody's brought across the, seas or whatever the case may be, but it's somewhere else. It's not right here in our own backyard. Well, it is right here in our own backyard, and it has been since the dawn of time. The problem is we don't know how to look at it. We have been closing our eyes to the issue for as long as I've been alive. So now we got to look at it with different eyes. We got to look at these kids that are runaways are not the bad kids, they're not the pains in the ass, they're the victims. They're victims of the crimes, and we need to look at them that way. So back to January, a tip came in that we have a identified juvenile runaway out of South Florida advertising for sex on Backpage in Tallahassee. And I heard the investigator that got the tip saying, we're going to get our special investigative unit, which is our VICE, to make a phone call and recover a runaway. And I was on the way out the door and I heard, what do you mean recover a runaway out of a hotel? And he said, just that, we got a runaway that's in a hotel. I said, if you've got a runaway in a hotel, advertised on Backpage, you have a victim of human trafficking. And he looked at me like there was something wrong with me. And anyway, and now he's our biggest fighter against human trafficking. I said, I promise you, and I called the sergeant and I said, can I please stay and work this case with Paul? And sure enough, we recovered a victim of human trafficking. She had been brought up here. We did search warrants on 2 hotel rooms. We got logs. She'd been trafficked in Panama City, Destin, Pensacola, Georgia, South Florida, just all over the place. So Paul was sold then. He was all about now we're going to make these human trafficking cases. Since January of last year, we've made 5. That's without trying to. Those are just tips that come in. 3 of those 5 were juveniles. The last one that we made, I'm going to finish out with this story real quick because it's my very favorite one. It is an open case, so I can't go into a whole lot of details. But this young lady was brought down from up north when she was 13 years of age by a pimp. She was trafficked in the state of Florida. We caught her 2 weeks before her 18th birthday. It was the 3rd time she'd been caught for prostitution, arrested for prostitution, okay? We didn't arrest her. We got her out of the hotel room. We met her needs, which were needed right away. We caught the pimp, we caught the recruiter, and she still wasn't talking to us, even though she said, I want out of the life. And she was ready to come out of the life. Until we found her dog. The only thing this kid cared about in the world was her dog. The dog was the only thing that had ever tried to protect her. She told me a story. I interviewed this girl for 4 hours. During the interview, she's talking about her dog, and she says to me, she said, her pimp came back to her, started to beat her butt, is how she put it. Well, that's actually not how she put it. But anyway, the dog came to her defense and attacked the pimp. And she started crying, and she said, that's the first time anybody ever took up for me. And I stopped the interview, and I walked out to another investigator. I said, I don't care what you do, find that dog. Because what this pimp was doing was he would get the dog, and whether she was arrested or whether she was picked up somewhere else, you got to come back to me because I have the only thing you care about is that dog. So we found out where the dog was, what hotel room the dog was in. Myself, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was the same night as the FSU shooting. You probably all heard about that. And we were actually at the hotel when it went off at the school, or parts of it went off at the school. And I thought this dog was going to eat me alive. We opened the door. I got down on my knees. The dog comes up. It's a huge bulldog. licks me in the face. We get the dog out, get him in the car, jumps over the seats, 3 in the morning, dog's butt's hitting my horn, my Karen Ryan's trying to pull the dog off of me. And so we ended up realizing that, oh my God, these are services we never thought about. We need somebody to take care of a dog. I can't take it home. I have 6 chickens and 6 dogs. I would get shot if I came home with another dog. So we reached out to a local vet who said they would take the dog. They provided about $800 services, fixing the dog and all kinds of different things. We found foster care for the dog. The girl was, she knew we had the dog, she told us everything about the 5 years that she's been trafficked throughout Florida, Louisiana, all over the country that she's been trafficked. And here's a good story. She went into a human trafficking house in Tampa. She turned 18. They got her into aftercare foster apartment. She just finished her GED. She's starting a cosmetology school. She's been reunited with her dog. And so you have to think outside the box when you think about protecting these kids. You have to think about other services and things like that. And you're going to have to not depend upon the state to do these things because the state doesn't have the money for it and they're never going to provide the money for it. I just don't believe that they're going to because it's not their top priority and you can't make it their top priority. So you have to start reaching out to your non-governmental agencies. And let me tell you something, since that one story that I just told you, I told that to a church group the other day. Since then, I have had 5 requests to do talks on human trafficking where these people are going to do fundraisers just so that we have services for kids when they come out. So it's just a matter of you spreading the word out there about human trafficking and getting these, there's a lot of people that want to help. And once they realize it's in their own community, they will help.